They
I said,
told
get
the
out of my way!
black man to wait
I'm afraid I can't
outside,
do that,
didn't
sir.
know
Don't
he
you
was
dare
the
defy me.
CEO.
You'll regret this.
Hello,
Hold your
everyone.
positions.
Before
Do not
we
engage.
begin today's video,
Understood.
I need your help. We've
need to
noticed that
stop
the
right now.
channel is
We'll sit there,
losing
face on the joke.
traction, and
We've warned you. Stand
subscribing
down.
is one of the best
Just
ways
listen
you
to
can
me.
help us.
Understood.
It's quick,
What's going
free, and allows us
Go,
to
now.
continue
Go.
bringing you great content.
I am here to
Your
see her.
support means everything. Let's keep this
She's
channel
not
growing
expecting you.
collectively.
Mr. Sterling, you're not
Where are
expected.
you watching from? Drop your city or
in
country
charge
in the
here?
comments
That
below.
would be me.
Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The glass doors opened without a sound. Not a slam. Not a flourish. Just a clean, deliberate slide that let light spill across the marble floor. He stepped inside. Tailored black suit. Crisp white shirt. No tie pin. No excess. The kind of presence that didn't rush the room it claimed it. For half a second, the lobby kept breathing. Then it didn't. Conversations thinned. Footsteps hesitated. A receptionist's fingers paused mid-keystroke. The air shifted subtle, almost polite but unmistakable. The man walked forward anyway. His posture was straight, unhurried. Shoulders relaxed. Eyes steady. Not scanning. Not searching. As if he already knew exactly where he was. Behind the front desk, 3 employees exchanged looks they thought were discreet. They weren't. One glance at his shoes. One at his face. One quick calculation that had nothing to do with appointments or schedules. A manager stepped out from behind the counter. Early 40s. Navy suit. Smile practiced thin enough to cut. "Sir," she said, voice smooth, carrying just far enough to be heard. "This is a private corporate space." The man stopped. Not startled, not confused. Just still. She took another step closer, lowering her voice the way people do when they think authority sounds better softened. "You'll need to wait outside." The words landed cleanly. No insult on the surface. No raised tone. But everyone felt it. A young associate near the elevator sucked in a breath. A security guard shifted his weight, instinctively aligning himself with the manager. Someone behind the glass walls pretended not to look and failed. The man didn't answer. He didn't ask why. Didn't reach for a badge. Didn't explain himself. Silence stretched, and in that silence, assumptions rushed in to fill the gap. The manager mistook his calm for compliance. "This won't take long," she added, already turning her body slightly as if the matter were settled. "Just wait right outside." The words "right outside" hung there neat and final. The man's eyes lifted, not sharply, not confrontationally, just enough to meet hers. There was no anger in them. No surprise. Only recognition. As if he'd heard this line before. As if he'd been standing in this exact moment years ago in a different building with different faces, but the same conclusion already drawn. He didn't move. Not forward. Not back. The lobby held its breath again. And before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Marcus Hale. He stood there centered between glass and marble, between judgment and power no one had recognized yet. Still silent. Still waiting. Not because he was told to, but because he knew exactly what came next. The silence didn't break. It settled. Marcus Hale remained where he was, centered beneath the soft glow of the lobby lights, as if the building itself had paused to accommodate him. The manager waited for movement, for the shuffle of feet, the half nod of submission, the quiet retreat she'd seen 100 times before. It didn't come. Instead, Marcus breathed once. Slow. Measured. The kind of breath taken by someone who had learned long ago that reacting too quickly only fed the wrong narrative. Around him, the room recalibrated. A junior associate near the glass wall pretended to check her phone, but her eyes kept lifting. She watched the way he stood, unapologetic, unhurried, like someone waiting for an elevator he owned. Two consultants whispered near the seating area, their voices low, uncertain. They weren't sure what they were witnessing yet, only that it felt off. The manager cleared her throat. "Sir," she said again, the smile thinning, authority sharpening beneath the polish. "I'll need you to step outside." Marcus turned his head slightly this time. Not away. Not toward the door. Toward her. The movement was minimal, but it carried weight. His gaze met hers calmly, evenly, without challenge. No flare of ego. No hint of fear. Just a look that said he was present and fully aware. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Uncertainty. She hadn't expected eye contact. Hadn't expected him to stay. People who were told to wait outside usually complied quickly. They filled the silence with apologies or explanations. They reached for wallets, phones, credentials. They tried to prove they belonged. Marcus did none of that. He stood there as if belonging was not something that needed proof. The security guard took a step closer, not aggressive, just procedural. The quiet kind of movement that signaled escalation without announcing it. His hand hovered near his belt, eyes trained forward, waiting for instruction. Marcus noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. The polished floors. The muted tension. The way power leaned subtly but unmistakably in one direction. He'd read rooms like this before, boardrooms, courtrooms, emergency meetings where voices stayed calm while futures were decided. This one was no different. He said nothing. That more than anything unsettled them. Behind the desk, a receptionist finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do we need to check the schedule? The manager didn't answer her?" She was still watching Marcus, measuring his silence, mistaking restraint for confusion. The pause stretched too long, now long enough to feel awkward, long enough for eyes to start shifting between them. Marcus broke it not with words, but with motion. He adjusted his cuff. A small, deliberate movement. The steel of his watch caught the light for a fraction of a second, then disappeared beneath his sleeve again. Expensive. Understated. Intentional. The associate near the wall noticed. Her brow furrowed. The manager noticed too, though she wouldn't admit it. Her posture stiffened. She straightened her blazer as if to remind herself who held authority here. "This won't be an issue," she said, more to the room than to him now. "We just need to keep this space clear." Marcus finally spoke. Not loudly. Not sharply. "Of course," he said. 2 words. Even tone. The relief in her expression was immediate and misplaced, because Marcus didn't move toward the door. He took 1 step forward instead. Not crossing a line. Just close enough to redraw it. And in that moment, the room understood something it couldn't yet explain. This man wasn't refusing to leave. He was waiting for them to realize who they had just told to wait outside. The shift was subtle, but it was there. The manager's confidence returned, reassembled from habit. She interpreted Marcus's 2 words as concession, his pause as delay, his stillness as confusion finally settling in. People like this, she thought, always needed a moment. She turned slightly, angling her body toward the desk, already signaling the next step. The kind of motion meant to close a conversation without finishing it. "We'll have security help you out," she said, voice smooth, efficient. Just to keep things moving. The phrase, "help you out," carried the weight of a decision already made. The guard didn't wait for further instruction this time. He stepped closer, presence widening, shoulders squared, not touching, not yet, but close enough to be felt. Close enough to remind Marcus where power was supposed to live. A man in a tailored gray suit near the seating area smirked openly now. He leaned toward his colleague and murmured something under his breath. The colleague chuckled, quick and quiet, the way people do when they feel aligned with authority. "Probably wandered," and the man said, not quite whispering. "Yeah," the other replied. "Happens." Marcus heard them. He always did. Behind the desk, the receptionist avoided his eyes entirely. Her fingers moved faster across the keyboard, typing nothing of consequence, just needing something to do with her hands. Another employee, young, fresh, unsure, shifted uncomfortably torn between what she was told and what she was witnessing. The manager mistook the tension for inconvenience. "This is a high-level environment," she continued explaining now, as if he'd asked. "Executives. Partners."
Sensitive meetings.
Her eyes flicked briefly to his suit again, then away. Too clean. Too quiet. Not loud enough to be important. Marcus said nothing. That silence gave them room. Room to narrate him. Room to decide who he was without asking. The guard cleared his throat. "Sir, if you'll just step this way," he gestured toward the door. Not aggressively, almost politely. The kind of gesture meant to look reasonable on camera. Marcus glanced at the door for the first time, then back at the guard. The look wasn't defiant. It wasn't fearful. It was curious. As if Marcus were studying a mechanism, observing how far it would go before it broke. Behind the glass wall, someone shifted in their chair, attention fully drawn now. Phones stayed down, but eyes were everywhere. This wasn't entertainment yet. It was discomfort. The kind that prickles when something feels wrong, but no one has named it out loud. The manager felt it too and tightened her grip on the moment.
Sir, she said again, this time firmer.
"You don't appear on our schedule." There it was. Not, "You're not scheduled." Not, "Let me check." You don't appear. A conclusion, not a question. Marcus finally nodded once. A slow, deliberate motion. "I see," he said. The guard relaxed, a fraction mistaking agreement for surrender. But Marcus wasn't acknowledging her authority. He was acknowledging her assumption. And as the room settled into the comfort of having labeled him lost, mistaken, out of place, Marcus reached calmly into his jacket. Not for a badge. Not for a card. For his phone. The motion was unhurried, precise. The smirk near the seating area widened. "Here we go," someone muttered. The manager exhaled, satisfied. This was usually where it ended, where explanations began, where excuses unraveled. Marcus looked down at the screen, thumb hovering for half a second before pressing a single contact. He lifted the phone to his ear, and the room, so certain just moments ago, leaned forward, unaware that every assumption they'd made was about to be tested. The call didn't echo. It didn't need to. Marcus held the phone to his ear without pacing, without turning away, as if privacy had never been a concern. His voice stayed low, even almost gentle, too soft for anyone nearby to catch more than rhythm. "Yes," he said. A pause. "I'm here." The manager watched closely now. People always gave themselves away on calls like this. They gestured too much. They raised their voices. They performed importance for an audience that hadn't granted it yet. Marcus did none of that. He listened. Across the lobby, something shifted. The young associate near the glass wall, her name badge still 2 new corners unscuffed, had stopped pretending to work. She watched the man in the black suit with growing unease. Not because he was loud, because he wasn't. She'd been trained to read calendars, not people. But even she could tell this didn't match the script. The manager glanced back at the desk. "Did you check the schedule?" she asked, sharp. I did," the receptionist replied. Her voice wavered. "There's nothing under that," she stopped herself. The associate frowned. "What name?" she asked quietly. The receptionist hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering her voice further. The associate's brow furrowed deeper. "Hale," she repeated. As in, the manager cut in quick. "It's fine. We've handled it." Handled it. The associate didn't like the way that sounded. She looked back at Marcus. He had turned slightly now, no longer facing the door, no longer centered on the manager. His attention was inward, focused on the voice in his ear. Calm, anchored, as if the rest of the room had already receded into background noise. "Yes," he said again. Another pause. No, that won't be necessary. The associate felt a chill. That wasn't the language of someone asking for help. That was the language of someone giving instruction. She took a step closer to the desk. I think I should check again, she said louder this time. The manager shot her a look. There's no need. But the associate was already typing. Her fingers moved quickly, bypassing the surface-level calendar, diving deeper into internal access she rarely touched.
She hadn't been told to.
She wasn't supposed to.
But something in her gut wouldn't let her stop. The screen refreshed. Once. Twice. Her breath caught. Behind her, Marcus lowered the phone slightly. Just enough to say one last thing. Go ahead, he said. Then he ended the call. The click was soft, but the associate heard it like a gunshot. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. The name was there. Not just scheduled flagged, marked with permissions that sat far above her pay grade. She swallowed hard. She said, voice barely steady. That name, it's not just on the schedule. The manager turned sharply. What do you mean the associate didn't look up? She couldn't. Not yet, Det. It's internal, she said. Executive level. The lobby didn't go silent this time. It tilted. Marcus slipped the phone back into his jacket movements, precise, unhurried. He met the associate's eyes across the desk. Just for a moment. No smile. No nod. Only a quiet acknowledgement. And for the first time since he'd walked in, someone in that room understood they hadn't stopped the wrong man at the door. They had delayed the truth. And it was already catching up. The room buzzed, now quietly, nervously, but Marcus barely heard it. Because the moment the associate said executive level, something else surfaced. Not in the room. In him. A memory he didn't summon. A memory that always arrived on its own. He was 23 the first time it happened. Different city. Different building. Same polished floors. He'd walked into a downtown office in a borrowed suit sleeves, half an inch too short, arsum folded perfectly in his hand. He remembered the receptionist's smile tightening when she looked up. Remembered how her eyes flicked past him, searching for someone else. You can wait outside, she'd said then, too. Same words. Same tone. He remembered standing on the sidewalk afterward, heat rising from the concrete, watching men who looked nothing like him walk straight through the doors he'd just been turned away from. No questions. No pauses. That was the day he learned something no business school ever taught him.
Silence could be mistaken for absence.
And patience for permission. The memory shifted. He was 32 now. A boardroom this time. Glass walls.
City skyline.
He'd been invited late after the deal was already framed, after the assumptions were already baked in. He remembered how the room went quiet when he spoke. Not because he was wrong. Because he wasn't expected. He'd won that deal. They'd shaken his hand afterward. Some of them still never looked him in the eye. Marcus exhaled slowly. Back in the lobby, the manager was speaking again, words blurring into one another. Something about protocol. Something about misunderstandings. The guard shifted, uncertain now, no longer sure which side of the line he stood on. Marcus didn't move. He stood exactly where he had been told not to stand. Because this moment, this pause, this discomfort, this unraveling felt familiar too. He'd learned to recognize it. The precise second when power realized it had miscalculated. Across the desk, the associate swallowed again, fingers frozen above the keyboard. She looked younger than she probably was. New enough to still believe systems were neutral. That rules were rules. She glanced up at Marcus, then back to the screen. What should she started. The manager cut her off.
Step away from that.
Her voice was sharper now. Defensive. Marcus finally spoke, not to the manager, not to the guard, but to the associate. Take your time, he said. The room stilled. It wasn't a command. It was reassurance. The associate nodded before she realized she was nodding. Marcus felt another memory flicker shorter this time. A night years ago, alone in an office, long after everyone else had gone home. Lights off. City glowing beyond the windows. He remembered standing there, jacket over a chair, wondering how many more rooms he'd have to enter before he was allowed to simply exist in them. He remembered the answer he'd given himself: as many as it takes. Back in the present, the manager took a step back, recalibrating, trying to regain ground she felt slipping beneath her feet. "This is getting out of hand," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "We can resolve this quietly." Marcus looked at her then. Really looked. Not with anger. Not with triumph. With clarity. "This is quiet," he said. And in that moment, she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't a misunderstanding being corrected. It was a pattern being interrupted, and Marcus Hale, still standing where he didn't belong, had no intention of letting it resume. The manager's smile returned, but this time it was brittle. "This doesn't need to escalate," she said, hands opening slightly, palms out. The universal gesture of control disguised as calm. "If there's been a mix-up, we can sort it out privately." Privately. The word hovered hopeful. A last attempt to pull the moment back behind closed doors where witnesses dissolved and narratives could be edited. Marcus didn't respond right away. He watched the room instead. The guard, no longer certain where to stand, shifted his feet again. Not forward this time. Sideways. Creating space. The receptionist sat, rigid eyes locked on her screen as if it might offer instructions. The associate stood frozen between them, caught in the cross-current of authority and truth. Marcus had seen this exact configuration before. The moment, right before systems chose which side they were on. He reached into his jacket again, not abruptly, not dramatically. The motion was smooth, almost boring. This time, he didn't pull out his phone. He pulled out nothing at all. His hand came back empty. That more than anything unsettled them. "I don't think privacy will help," Marcus said at last. His voice was steady, unraised. "Transparency usually works better." The manager's jaw tightened. "We have protocols," she replied quickly. "Procedures we're required to follow." Marcus nodded once. "So do I?" The associate's eyes flicked up. Marcus turned slightly, just enough to address the desk, not the manager. "Is the system still open?" he asked. The associate hesitated, then nodded. Yes. "Good," Marcus said. "Leave it there." The manager stepped forward. "Sir, you can't just—" Marcus raised a hand. Not sharply, not dismissively. Just enough. She stopped mid-sentence without meaning to. "I've already called ahead," Marcus continued. "You'll want to let this run." The guard frowned. Called who, he asked before he could stop himself. Marcus met his eyes. "The people who don't need to be here to be heard." The guard swallowed. Phones began to buzz, quiet vibrations at first. A consultant glanced down, then frowned. Another checked their screen, eyes widening slightly before locking it again. Somewhere behind the glass, a door opened and closed. The manager felt it slipping now. She straightened, voice firming. "This is a disruption," she said. "If you can't comply, we'll have to ask you to leave." Marcus smiled. Just barely. "You already did," he said. The words landed softly, but they landed. He took a single step back, giving the room space to breathe. Not retreating. Centering. "This isn't a confrontation," Marcus continued. "It's a correction." The associate's screen refreshed again. New notifications stacked where there had been none. Permissions updating. Flags changing color. Her breath caught. The receptionist leaned closer. "What's happening?" she whispered. "I don't know," the associate replied honestly. "But it's live." Marcus adjusted his cuff once more, a habit, not a signal. "Let it finish," he said. The manager opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since Marcus had walked in, she wasn't sure what to say, because whatever protocol she thought she was enforcing, someone else had already taken over. And Marcus Hale stood calmly at the center of it, not watching the system activate, but allowing it to do exactly what it was built to do. The notifications didn't stop. They multiplied. Soft vibrations rippled through the room, phones lighting up screens, tilting away from curious eyes, faces tightening as people read messages they hadn't expected to receive. The quiet buzz of the lobby thickened into something else. Recognition. The associate stared at her monitor, frozen. Lines of access unfurled like doors, unlocking in sequence levels she'd only seen during onboarding, explained once and never touched again. Owner tier. Executive override. Active. Her mouth went dry. The manager felt it before she understood it. That subtle drop in the stomach. The sensation that comes when authority realizes it has been standing on borrowed ground.
She forced a laugh.
"This is unnecessary," she said. "If there's been a misunderstanding, we can clear it up." Marcus turned to her fully now. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make the moment unavoidable. "There's been no misunderstanding," he said. The room leaned in without moving. "You told me to wait outside," Marcus continued, voice calm, precise. "You said this was a private space. That I didn't appear on your schedule." Each sentence landed separately. Measured. Final. He paused. Long enough for the words to settle. Then he said it. "You told me to wait outside, a breath, steady, unhurried in the company I run." Silence. Not the awkward kind, the absolute kind. The associate's hands dropped from the keyboard. The receptionist's eyes widened. The guard stiffened, instinctively straightening as if someone far above his rank had just entered the room. The manager's face drained of color. "That's not," she started. Marcus lifted a finger not to stop her.
To finish it.
"I'm Marcus Hale," he said. "Chief Executive Officer." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "I don't require an appointment to enter my own building," he continued. "And don't wait outside because someone mistakes presence for permission." Behind the glass, a door opened. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, eyes locked on Marcus with immediate recognition and something close to alarm. "Sir?" he said quietly. That was all it took. The manager turned slowly. "You knew?" she asked. The man didn't answer her. Phones buzzed again. Louder this time. "Unignorable." The associate's screen flashed red, then green access revocations cascading downward. Marcus looked around the room once more. At the people who had looked through him, around him, past him. "This isn't about embarrassment," he said. "It's about standards." He met the manager's eyes one last time, and today he added, "You showed me exactly which ones need to change." The silence broke not with applause, not with outrage, but with understanding. The kind that comes too late. And as the system finished recalibrating around him, one truth settled heavily in the air. They hadn't just misjudged a man. They had exposed themselves. The system didn't hesitate. It never did. Across the lobby, screens refreshed in quiet unison, no alarms, no theatrics. Just clean lines of text updating in real time. Access levels dimmed. Permissions vanished. Names that had carried weight seconds ago lost their color. The associate watched it happen, pulse racing.
She didn't touch the keyboard.
She didn't have to. The manager's phone vibrated hard in her hand. Once. Twice. Then again. She glanced down instinctively and froze. Her smile never came back. That must be an error," she said, though the certainty had already drained from her voice. "We can call IT." Marcus shook his head gently. "They're already here," he said. Behind the glass, the man in the tailored suit cleared his throat. We need the desk cleared, he said to no one in particular. His tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The guard stepped back immediately. Not in protest. In understanding. The receptionist's screen went blank, then reloaded with a limited interface she'd never seen before. Her access badge chirped softly at her waist, one short tone neutral but final. The associate felt her own badge vibrate. Still active. She swallowed. The manager looked around searching for anyone who might confirm this was still her room.
Still her moment.
Still her authority. No one met her eyes. This is highly irregular, she said, voice thin now. You can't just Marcus interrupted her, not with volume but with timing. You already did, he said. You just didn't realize it yet. He turned slightly, addressing the man behind the glass. Proceed. That was all. The man nodded once. Effective immediately, he said, reading from his screen. Your administrative access is suspended pending review. You'll be escorted out shortly. The words were clean. Practiced. Irreversible. The manager opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Around the room, people stood straighter. Conversations stopped entirely now. No whispers. No commentary. Just witnesses watching a system correct itself. The guard cleared his throat again, this time softer. Ma'am, he said, turning toward the manager. Not assertive. Apologetic. If you'll come with me.
She stared at him, incredulous.
You're siding with him? She asked. The guard didn't answer. He didn't need to. Marcus stepped back, giving her space. He didn't watch her leave. He didn't need the satisfaction. The outcome had already been decided. As she walked toward the exit, slowly now, shoulders tight, the associate felt something settle in her chest. Relief. Not triumph. Relief fee. Marcus remained where he was centered in the lobby once more. The same spot. The same light. But the room was different now. Quieter. Straighter. Aware. He adjusted his cuff one final time and turned away from the desk. The collapse had been silent, which made it complete. And as the doors closed behind the manager who had told him to wait outside the lobby, finally understood power didn't announce itself. It simply removed what no longer belonged. The lobby exhaled. Not all at once, but enough to be felt. People shifted their weight. Someone cleared a throat. A chair scraped softly against marble. The tension that had been coiled so tightly moments before loosened, leaving behind something quieter and heavier. Accountability. Marcus stood still as the room recalibrated around him. No one rushed to apologize. No one tried to explain. They knew better now. The associate stepped out from behind the desk, unsure where to place herself. She glanced at Marcus, then at the space where the manager had been, then back again. I'm sorry, she said finally. The words were sincere but tentative. I should spoken up sooner? Marcus met her eyes. You did speak up, he said. When it mattered. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Behind the glass, the man in the tailored suit closed his tablet and nodded once. Everything's been logged, he said quietly. We'll handle the rest. Marcus inclined his head. No handshake. No ceremony. Good, he said. He turned back to the room, not as a victor addressing the defeated, but as a leader addressing a standard. I want to be clear, Marcus said. His voice carried without effort. This wasn't about being recognized. He let the words settle. If I needed validation to walk through my own doors, this company would already be lost. No one interrupted. This was about how easily power gets comfortable, he continued. How quickly assumptions replace curiosity. And how often silence is mistaken for permission. The guard straightened unconsciously. The receptionist nodded once, barely perceptible. Marcus took a step forward, then stopped choosing his words with the same care he chose his actions. I didn't raise my voice, he said. I didn't demand respect. A pause. I raised the standard. The associate felt a chill run through her, not fear, but something closer to resolve. Marcus glanced once more around the lobby, at the people who would remember this moment not as drama but as correction, as something that had been allowed to happen because it always had and would not again. He turned toward the elevators. This time, no one moved to stop him. No one questioned where he belonged. The doors opened silently. As Marcus stepped inside, the associate realized something she hadn't before. Power didn't need witnesses to exist, but when it did act, it left witnesses changed. The doors slid shut. The lobby remained quieter than before, straighter than before. And for the first time that morning, the building reflected exactly what it was supposed to represent. Not prestige, not exclusivity, but dignity applied evenly without exception. And long after Marcus Hale was gone, that standard stayed behind. Unignorable. Permanent. The lobby didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Even after the elevators swallowed Marcus Hale and the soft chime faded into silence, the space held onto what had happened as if the walls themselves were recalibrating. People lingered longer than they needed to. A consultant who had been late to a meeting stood frozen near the seating area, phone still in hand, unread messages glowing on his screen. Two employees exchanged a look that said the same thing neither was ready to say out loud. Did you see that the associate returned to the desk slowly, her movements careful now? Not fearful where. She straightened a stack of folders that hadn't actually moved, grounding herself in something tangible. The receptionist finally exhaled. I thought I knew how this place worked, she murmured. The associate nodded. I think we all did, she replied. And I think we were wrong. Behind the glass, the man in the tailored suit spoke quietly into his phone. Yes. Logged, witnesses noted. A pause. No, this won't be brushed aside. His tone made it clear this wasn't damage control. This was course correction. The guard shifted back to his post posture, different now. Straighter, but not rigid. As if something had been lifted rather than added. A few minutes later, an internal message pinged across devices throughout the building. Short, unmistakable. All staff are reminded that access and authority do not replace respect. Immediate reviews pending. No signatures. No explanations. None were needed. The associate read it twice, then looked up at the entrance, the same glass doors Marcus had walked through earlier that morning. They looked different now, not because of who had entered, but because of who had been exposed. She thought of the moment she'd hesitated, the moment she'd almost stayed quiet, and the moment she hadn't. That would stay with her. Across the lobby, conversations resumed, but carefully, with fewer assumptions, with a new awareness that power wasn't always where people thought it lived. And somewhere above them, in offices that never saw the lobby floor, decisions were already being made, quiet ones, permanent ones. By the end of the day, reports would be written, titles revised, processes updated, but the real change had already happened, because everyone who had been there would remember this morning not as a scandal but as a reminder that dignity isn't granted by position, it's revealed by behavior, and that sometimes the most powerful statement a leader can make is not who they are but what they refuse to tolerate. By midday, the story had already started spreading, not loudly, not online, through glances, through lowered voices. Through the subtle way people checked themselves before speaking. The associate noticed it first. In meetings, pauses lasted longer. People chose their words with more care. Titles were used less as weapons and more as references. It was as if the building had learned something and wasn't eager to forget it.
She replayed the moment in her head again and again.
The hesitation, the screen refreshing, the realization. She hadn't planned to be brave. She hadn't planned anything at all. She'd simply refused for once to look away. Across the floor, the guard caught her eye and nodded once. No apology. No explanation. Acknowledgement. The receptionist stood straighter now, her smile no longer automatic. When someone approached the desk, she asked questions instead of making conclusions. It slowed things down, but no one complained. They understood why. In a conference room upstairs, a senior director paused mid-sentence when someone joked he didn't look like a CEO. The room went still. "That's not a thing," the director said calmly and moved on. No debate. No laughter. The correction stood. By the afternoon, word reached employees who hadn't been there. The details shifted slightly with each telling, but the core stayed intact. A man was told to wait outside. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He let the system speak. And it did. For those who had witnessed it, firsthand the impact was deeper. They'd seen how quickly certainty could be wrong, how easily confidence turned into exposure, how silence, when paired with truth, could dismantle a room. The associate closed her laptop at the end of the day and lingered by the glass doors before leaving. She looked out at the city, then back at the lobby. It felt different now.
Not safer.
Not softer. Just more honest. She realized then that moments like this didn't need to go viral to matter. They lived on in behavior, in hesitation before judgment, in the choice to check rather than assume. Marcus Hale had already moved on, but what he'd left behind was still working. Quietly. Relentlessly. Exactly as intended. Evening light stretched across the lobby, softer, now less demanding. By then, the building had settled not into comfort, but into awareness. The kind that lingers long after a moment passes, reshaping how people move through a space without announcing itself. The associate walked past the desk one last time before leaving. She paused where Marcus had stood that morning. Same marble. Same glass. Same quiet. Different weight. She realized something then: power hadn't entered the building that day. It had always been there. What changed was who was allowed to recognize it. Outside, the city carried on. Cars moved. Phones buzzed. No headlines broke. No applause followed. And yet, something irreversible had been set in motion. Upstairs, policies would be rewritten. Training would be scheduled. Emails would circulate with careful language and cautious intent. But none of that was the point. The point was simpler. One man had refused to perform for access. Refused to explain his worth. Refused to raise his voice to be heard. Instead, he had let the standards speak. And standards once raised have a way of staying that way. As the lights dimmed and the last employees filtered out, the lobby stood empty, quiet, watchful, changed. Not because someone powerful had walked through it, but because everyone else now knew what power actually looked like. It didn't demand space. It defined it. And tomorrow, when the doors opened again, no one would say, "Wait outside," the same way ever again. Because dignity, once enforced, doesn't ask permission. It sets the line and leaves it there.